Can you
Now,
hear
can
me
you hear
now?
me, Virgil?
I can hear you. Can you hear
Can
me?
I hear you?
Can you hear
I
me?
can't hear you. You're not there. Wow, that is
It's
amazing.
something going on. It's got to be something going on with
I
Wardell's
cannot
mic
hear
because
Virgil. I can't hear
I can hear
Don.
both of
I
you.
can't.
Don can hear
It's,
me. Don can
Yeah,
hear
crazy.
you.
We've been doing this show every day,
I can hear you.
and I can't hear you guys
It says you're in the show.
say or what to do here. It's Don
Hold on.
Fleming, Modell Potts, Virgil Roberts,
Let's see.
and
I'm
this is
trying
a
to see if there's.
difficult situation for me.
Can you hear me now?
Well, hello.
Can you
One,
hear me
two,
now,
three,
Don?
one,
Can you,
two.
I
There
I
you
can hear
go.
you.
I
you
can
can
hear
hear me?
you.
What did
Okay.
you do?
I can hear. I can hear you.
You can hear me.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
I've never not been able to hear you.
Okay, but I can hear you is the key. That's important.
Well, it's
Let's
important to
see
you.
it.
Yeah, you're the host.
Yeah. All right, there we go. Hallelujah. I don't know what's going on here, but I'm so blessed. I got you guys. Thank you, God, for blessing us. Anyway, how are you guys?
Good.
Don Fleming,
I'm good, man.
I,
I'm good.
I
Yeah.
want to introduce you to Virgil Roberts.
How you
You
doing,
guys,
Don?
have y'all?
Hey, how you doing? Good to meet you.
Man, I'm doing as I said, I'm doing as well as can be expected for a man of my vintage.
All right. All right. That's good to hear, counselor.
Man, I'm telling you, this guy's counseled a lot of people. And I just want to say thank you so much, Virgil, for taking out this time. Unfortunately, we had this little issue, but I think we're okay. I think we're going to be okay. And so I want to, oh, yeah. Okay. So I want to push by this because you are the man with the information. And you have blessed all of us as Solar for so many years. And I want to thank you from the bottom of my heart for blessing so many of my constituents, all the musicians and the writers and the producers and the artists. And I mean, and the people that worked at Solar. And I want you to kind of tell us, how did you ever get started with Solar? How did this whole thing come together for you? I know you and Dick were friends for a long time. So, and it's up to you how you want to pace this, but take your time. You got
well, it's not a difficult story, okay?
Okay.
Because when I started practicing law, my real interest was I wanted to be a civil rights lawyer. I mean, that's really why I went to law school. And before what motivated me to go to law school was the events of 1967. And I don't know if you're old enough to remember what happened in 1967, but it was like the George Floyd moment. And
Detroit riots.
In 1967, there were over 107 riots in America. It was a summer that there was huge riot in Newark and Detroit, but beyond Newark and Detroit, there were race riots in literally everywhere. New York, Washington, D.C., all around the country, there was this sense that America was burning up. And so I actually had a job in Washington, D.C. I was working for the Voice of America because I wanted to be a Foreign Service officer. I wanted to be like Ralph Bunche. And for those in your audience who don't know who Ralph Bunche is or was, he was the first Black Nobel Prize winner. And he really earned his Nobel Prize for the peace he negotiated in Palestine for what later became Israel. So I have modeled my life after being like Ralph Bunche. And so I had gotten an internship with the State Department, and I was writing news for the Vietnamese branch of the Voice of America. I did news and a jazz show.
How old were you? How old were you
It
at this
must
time?
have been, maybe 20. Yeah, maybe 20.
Wow.
And yeah, in fact, I was 20. I was 20 years old. And I came back to UCLA after spending about 4 months working for the government, and I switched my major to constitutional law. Then I went to law school. I graduated from college, went to law school. When I got out of law school, what I found was that most civil rights organizations didn't really hire a lot of lawyers. They relied on volunteer attorneys who would handle some of their cases. And so I'm shortening the story, but ultimately I started my own law practice. And so that I could do other things, like I represent the NAACP in the Los Angeles school desegregation case in the mid 70s. And in order to pay my bills for volunteering my time, I would do anything that you could pay for. If you had a problem in a check, I would represent you. And so I did, litigation for the Rapid Transit District. I represented, people in all kinds of litigation and other things. And the first law firm I worked at had done a lot of entertainment work. And one of the things I did as a trial lawyer is I represented Motown because Motown was a client of the first firm where I was working at before I started my firm. And I became friends with the general counsel at Motown. Back then was a guy named Ralph Seltzer. And the assistant general counsel was a brother named Bob Holmes. We became friends. And when I started my own practice, they started referring me clients. And so, I represented Martha Reeves for a while. I represented, a lot of Motown artists. But my first big client was Norman Whitfield. And, for folks in the music business, who Norman is, because Norman was a great songwriter producer. And I helped Norman start his own record label, Whitfield Records. And then we started to sign acts. And maybe the first act that I signed to his label was Rolls Royce. And the first record deal that I did for Norman was the soundtrack to Car Wash. So because I was representing Norman, I started to represent a lot of the Black talent that was in LA. Now the Whispers had become friends of mine. Walter and I had lived in an apartment building together. And so we became like friends, we played tennis and we go bike riding and stuff together. Right. It was through Walter and Scotty that I met Dick, because Dick was like the sixth whisper. He was a concert promoter. And so I got to know Dick. I was a young guy, and my house, I was the first one from the apartment building to buy a house. So I bought a house with my first wife, and we'd have a party every weekend. We were young. And so Dick used to come by. He'd bring like records fresh off the press and say, "How does this sound?" And I put it on the turntable to see if people would dance to it or not. So the relationship I had was like, he was a friend of Walt and Scotty's, and so Dick kind of became a friend of mine. Well, Dick and Don started Soul Train Records, and what happened is Don Cornelius was really bankrolling a lot of the company. He decided, his lawyers decided that he was losing too much money, and so he literally shut the company down while Dick was on the road. They had a big tour package. It was the Whispers and the OJs and Johnny Guitar Watson and Shalimar. They're all on this tour. And when they came back to Los Angeles, the company had closed its doors. That was when Solar had an office on Sunset. And so then Walter came to me and said, I'd like for you to represent us, the Whispers. And I said, Walter, no, I don't want to represent you guys. You're my friends. You come at my house, we play basketball, we sit around, eat barbecue chicken and stuff. And I said, I don't want to be talking business with my friends. Because I think a lawyer should want an arm's length relationship with their clients.
Right.
But Walter said, no, our company's gone out of business and we need somebody to represent us. And so I said, okay, I will try and represent you. And so I started negotiating a deal with them with Philly International. Because the OJs were at the end of their contract. And so Kenny and Leon were looking for another vocal group. And the Whispers was a group that they were interested in. But what I later learned out is the negotiations with the Whispers was really they were negotiating with the Whispers to get leverage with the OJs. And so when they re-signed the OJs, they were no longer interested in the Whispers. Meanwhile, Dick kept trying to sign the Whispers. He had gone back to RCA Records, and he actually had gotten a new distribution deal with RCA because apparently the executives at RCA really didn't like Don Cornelius that much, but they liked Dick. And so they made a deal with him, and he said, I got to re-sign the Whispers. So then I end up negotiating a deal with Dick for the Whispers. And we signed a short-term deal. I think it was only for like maybe 2, maybe 3 albums with the Whispers. It was during the course of that negotiation that I got to know Dick better as a business person. So I redid a deal with Dick, and then along the way, I started to represent, other talent that was here in Los Angeles, other Black talent. There weren't a lot of Black lawyers. This is like back in the maybe mid 70s, early 70s. And there probably weren't more than maybe 8 or 10 Black lawyers in America who really did entertainment work on a regular basis. And so, Dick was the biggest concert promoter, Dick Review Productions, and did all the big Black shows and stuff. So if you were representing talent, you were going to do business with Dick, either for promotion and then ultimately for the record company. And then I represent Leon Silvers. And so Leon started producing hits for Solar, And the Beat Goes On, Second Time Around, big songs. And so then Dick had an office that was really sort of an office that Don had closed down. And really, he would do a lot of his work out of his apartment. He lived over in the jungle at that point in time. And he used to do his business. There were a bunch of phone booths that were on a La Brea. And Dick would go there with his briefcase, and he had one phone. He'd be making calls on, and another phone that you could call him back on. And then all of a sudden, he had all this success with the records, and he had Johanna Bogota, who was Stevie Wonder's lawyer, negotiated a new distribution deal for him with RCA. And so he had a short-term deal with RCA. And as that deal was coming to an end, he then had the records out with And the Beat Goes On, Second Time Around, and Lakeside. He had 3 platinum-selling records and was making money hands over fist, and he was out of his deal. And so he went and started to negotiated a new distribution deal with Electro Asylum with William.
I thought he had. I'm so glad you're clarifying this, because we thought we were with RCA and Dick went and did the deal with Electra and had to end up just giving him some stuff to get rid of.
Yeah, what he did is he did a deal with Electra, and to get out of his deal, he owed RCA records.
Right.
And so he did, like I think like 3 albums, on the Whispers, I think Lakeside. He did what I would call throwaway albums,
Right. That's what he called it.
just to fulfill his requirement so he could be
Right.
out of the RCA deal.
Right. Right.
Um,
Okay.
And so as he made the deal with WIA, with Electra, he came to me and then he said, I want you, I've gotten to know you. I would like for you to come and be my lawyer. And so then we went through a negotiation because I said, man, I don't like working for people. I really like being independent. And I said, I'm starting to build a clientele because there weren't that many Black lawyers, as I said, in the entertainment business. So, my law practice was doing really well. Not only was I representing the Whispers, but I was representing Cheryl Lynn. She had won on the Gong Show. I was representing Leon, who was producing all these hits for Solar, and he was interested in doing other things. And I had lots of people coming. I said, well, man, I don't know if I want to give up my practice to go to work for a company, because then if we don't get along and I got to go back into practice, I got to start all over again,
All over
building
again.
practice and building an office. And I had beautiful offices. My office then was on like the 28th floor of the 1900 building in Century City. And
Wow.
I had a spectacular view all over the city of Los Angeles. And I wasn't doing just entertainment work. I was doing a lot of litigation for other people. But Dick said, look, man, I am really Afrocentric and I want to have a Black lawyer. And you're the only Black lawyer I know. And if I don't hire you, then I'm going to hire a Jewish lawyer to represent me, which I really would like not to do. So then I said to Dick, I said, okay, I will come and help you set up your company, because that was before the building had been built and stuff. And so I knew some things about real estate development. So I said, okay, I'll come and I'll work for you for 3 years, help you get your building built, kind of set up some things for you with the bank, because Dick was still banking with the bank in Kansas City then. And I said, no, you need to have a local bank, and I have some banking connections. So I went to work with the idea that I would stay there for 3 years. And before I went, I talked to some of my clients like the Whispers and said, what do you think about my going to work at Solar? Because I'm going to work for the company. Now I can't represent you, because it would be a conflict, obviously, because you'd be negotiating with the company. And,
Right.
clients have said, no, man, we think it'd be great because you're working there. Then at least we'll have somebody on the inside to go talk to. So that's how I ended up going to work at Solar.
Wow. My God. Great. Don Fleming? Yeah.
I mean,
I know.
I'm a fan just listening. I think I'm a history person and things like that, and I can tell. I don't know if this is a weird question to ask you, Virgil, but I can tell the sense of, you wanted a sense of kind of peace, as far as no conflict of interest.
Right.
I'm seeing that you got that resonated from working with, having a mentor like Dr. Ralph Bunch, and, considering what he did with the negotiations and, during the state of Israel and the ceasefire and things like that. I mean, did a little bit of that kind of resonate with you when it came to not rocking the boat as far as the conflict of interest, and just wanted to be kind of a peacemaker?
Well, it wasn't so much as peacemaker. It's like I take the canons of ethics seriously.
Exactly. Okay.
The way that you should operate as a lawyer. And, I grew up in a different environment than we're in now. When I started practicing law, it was against the rules, against the canons of ethics for lawyers to advertise, for example. And, the canons of ethics require that you do not have conflicts between clients. A lot of that has gone away. Now you have lawyers saying, well, I'm representing the executive of the company, so I can get you the best deal. So let me represent you. But that's an impermissible conflict for me. So I've never done that. And then the other thing was what happened with me during the 60s. The 67 was really a bright letter year in my life because it's 67 that we went from being Negro to Black. The whole Black consciousness movement began to come about like around late 66, 67. That's when the Black Panther Party started. The autobiography of Malcolm X had come out in 66. Stokely Carmichael and wrote a book along with Charles, what was Charles' last name? An English professor called Black Power.
Mm-hmm.
And so I spent a lot of time reading those books. I was a student at UCLA, so I helped start the Black Student Union there. I wrote a proposal to create the Black Studies program that's existing at UCLA now. It's its 50th year. But I helped create the Black Studies program. And so my orientation was that as a Black professional, I wanted to work with Black people.
Mm-hmm.
Pretty much, that was one of the reasons I started my own law practice, so that I could select the clients that I worked for. And what I wanted to do was share what I knew about business and about law with folks in the Black community. And I still try and do that, So it's my own personal value system. I really believe that the only salvation for us is us. And the one thing that Dick and I really connected on is he was extremely Afrocentric. He wanted to have Black folks do everything, and he really believed in Black folks. So, all the years that we were at Solar, even like when we built the building, for example, we wanted to use only people of color in what we did. And when we built like the office building, there was no Black contractor in California that could get bonded to build a high-rise building. So what we ultimately ended up doing was we found a white contractor who was willing to partner with a Black contractor, this guy named Ray Dones in the Bay Area, who was a builder. And by him partnering, he became certified to do high-rise buildings.
Wow.
So we built the studio. The studio is on the third floor. And to build a studio in a high-rise building was all by itself a very complicated thing to do. And we found the one Black audio engineer. He was a professor at MIT. And we got him involved to help us build the studio in a way in which it would have no sound leaking in. So there was as much steel on the studio that was on the third floor as there was in the rest of the building. So that studio was built like a cage that was hanging down from the ceiling. And then we had lead around what would be the windows of the building. And then the studio was built on a floating floor so that there'd be no sound, like the way a building works. You could close a door in the garage, which is a subterranean garage, and the vibration from the door closing would go up the steel beams in the building, and it could leak into the studio. So that we had to have the studio constructed in a way where that couldn't happen. And then we actually went to England. There was a 48-track SSL board in the studio that we had custom built in England and had it shipped here. And then we had to have,
Wow.
because it was a fully computerized automated board, you had to have special kinds of air conditioning to keep it cool. And yet you had to have air conditioning that would not make any noise that would affect the sound quality in the building. So the ducts and stuff had to be constructed in a certain way to come into like the control room and stuff. So all that was designed by the one black engineer in America who could do it.
Whoa.
And so
Whoa.
we'd fly him out here regularly to do that. So all the things that we did with solar were designed to really try and give back to the black community and stuff. So with that, so Dick and I agreed on doing those kind of things.
Just real quickly, I noticed that we, as Leon Silvers and myself, and the other writers and producers that were working on a lot of the projects, we continued to work out of Studio Masters and Larrabee Studios, and also the House on the Hill studio. So
Right.
I wonder, why didn't we get to go into this amazing studio that you guys built?
Because it was Leon's choice.
Oh, there you go.
It's Leon's choice.
That's a great.
So when you work with artists, and by the way, it took a while to build the building and to build the studio. I don't think the studio opened until about 1983. If I'm right, 82,
Okay.
maybe. 83. I think 83 was when the studio was finally open. And before then, Studio Masters was kind of like the home of Solar Records, because everything was done there. But when you hire a producer, a lot of times a producer, they pick where they want to work. And so Leon, for him, Studio Masters and Larrabee, they were like homes for him.
Yes.
He was familiar with the rooms and stuff, and that's where we worked. But, starting in about 1983, I think we started doing most of the recording in the Solar Studios.
Okay.
Yeah, but it's an incredible studio. Did you ever work in there?
What's
Did you
that?
ever work in the Solar Studios?
Never. I did. Yeah, actually, we did, but it was just a short overdubbing kind of situation where, I actually recorded some drums on some songs in there, but it was short and sweet. It wasn't home for us. Studio Masters was home. So we went there, and I remember it was just a moment, like you're in and you're out and it's done. It's over with.
Yeah. So the studios, we call it Galaxy Studios.
Yeah.
But it was state-of-the-art facility. I think that when we got the SSL console, I think there maybe only been 4 of them on the West Coast.
Wow. I love that console.
Because it's fully computerized and stuff. And what and so what we did, the third floor of the building was designed to be a creative floor. So there was a rehearsal hall on that floor. There were writers' rooms on that floor, as well as the studio. And then the studio was built like the main room was big enough to accommodate an orchestra. Because in the old days, when you made records, if you wanted to do string overdubs, you would bring in the string section from the LA Philharmonic, and they would do the overdubs,
Right.
And so, so we built the studio to do that. And then, there were some things that we bought, like echo plates and stuff that you couldn't get anywhere else. And we bought a bunch of old microphones that were special microphones. And so there was a storage facility that was there on that floor. But the whole idea was to have a place so you wouldn't have to go to SIR if you wanted to have somebody who's putting together a show or doing a showcase. They could do it in the rehearsal room that was there.
Right.
Writers would want to get together and collaborate. There were writers' rooms, so you could get together and do that. So it was a whole creative floor that was designed. The architects who designed it were two Japanese architects, Katayama and Mach, because we had to get somebody that could design a high-rise building. And like I said, there just weren't a lot of Black architects who could do high-rise buildings or build them.
Okay.
So that was a project that that I came there to work on because I knew how to do the contracts for architects and builders and stuff. Because the first law firm that I worked at was a big law firm. It was a predominantly Jewish law firm, and so before I became a litigator, I did. They had a practice in where you would rotate through different departments. So I did probate and estate planning. I did tax. I did real estate work. I even did a little entertainment work. And then I went to the litigation department after a couple of years and started doing litigation. But I had a background with kind of various areas of practice of law that really has served me well over the years, because there's a lot of stuff that I learned that I know. So even though I'm not, let's say, an expert in tax, but I know enough tax to know what the problems are that need to be solved,
Right,
and
right,
be
right,
able
right.
to supervise somebody who's doing that work because I know what it ought to look like,
Right. Absolutely.
And so those were some of the skills and knowledge that I brought to working at Solar.
I have a question for you. It's it's kind of a deep question. I never asked anyone this question, but I think I could ask you this, and you can
ask any
it
question.
way
I don't have to answer it, but you can ask it.
Yeah. You don't have to answer it. But so it's a twofold question. One of the questions is I want to know, from when all the stuff was going with Solar, do you have a great memory of something that you would like to share that really blessed you, like a moment in time as you were working with Solar? What was one of those great moments? But I also want you to answer that same question, but I want you to replace yourself with your partner, with your buddy, Mr. Dick Griffey. What do you think was a great moment for him as well?
Well, what I think is, Dick was. So I'll answer for myself, and I answer for Dick. I think the most interesting moment that I have a fond memory of is there was a time when all of the companies that had international distribution, and WIA was one, they would have a conference where all of their companies would come and meet. And so they had a meeting one year in France, and Dick and I went to the meeting. And the real reason we went to the meeting is because we were not getting any sales of Solar product from overseas. And so I'm meeting with some of the executives that were there, and we're saying, how come we can't sell more? How come we're not getting more record sales and stuff here? And they said, well, basically, you're doing R&B music, and people in Europe and the rest of the world, that doesn't really resonate with them. The only group you have that we think we can really sell is the Whispers. So, we went through that conversation. And then that night we went to a disco in Paris. We just went out to dinner, and, Dick and I went. And we got there, and the DJ found out that Griffey was in the audience, and they stopped the music and said, ladies and gentlemen, we have in the house tonight that American impresario, Mr. Richard Griffey. And every record they were playing in the disco was a Solar record. I mean, literally, every record, and people knew the music, were singing along. So what ended up happening is I went back the next day and I said, you guys are probably right. Our music is not selling that well. Why don't you just give us our foreign distribution rights back since you're not making any money on it? And they did. They gave us back our distribution rights because the white executives did not believe that anybody would buy Black music. And so later on, I was able to make foreign distribution deals with independent record companies all around the world. I made deals with Vogue Records in France. I made a deal with the Benelux companies. I made a deal with Edel in Germany. I made a deal with an Italian company. I made a deal with a Romanian company. I made a deal with a company in Singapore. I made a deal with JVC in Japan. I made a deal in Australia because so what I learned was that and it was sort of an aha moment for me because I had never really traveled outside the country. And so it was the first time that I got a view of what America was like from not being in America. And I got an understanding of, how so many, Black musicians had gone to Paris and stuff, to perform and stuff and left the United States because over there, they viewed our music as being a really unique and special art form. Over here, and we're going back now, back in time, you couldn't even get Black records on the pop charts. Because they would say white people don't like that music.
Right.
But when you go to Europe, it was the music that they preferred.
Right. Exactly.
It was always a sense of conventional wisdom
So for me, going overseas was the most eye-opening thing because it made me see me and Black folks differently than the way we were brought up to think of ourselves.
Excellent.
So that was an aha moment for me. I think what happened with Dick is probably the thing that was most exciting for him is when we went to Africa. And he was always something of a Pan-Africanist, but he fell in love with Africa. And
yes, he did.
It's really his love of Africa that I think ultimately led to the demise of Solar, because it was almost the music business was too small for him. He really was not interested in that. He became more interested in doing nation building and trying to trade diamonds and gold and doing things in Africa. And as you probably remember, after we sold Solar, he actually moved to Ghana. And he lived there till he got sick. But in Africa, Griffey was like an unbelievable celebrity. He was the second American that ever addressed the OAU, the Organization of African Unity. There are places in Africa like South Africa, like we did the first anti-apartheid telethon in America. We bought time on BET, and that was the time when the ANC was still considered to be a communist front group. That the Americans opposed and was not willing to recognize the ANC, do things. So Dick was really became very much more of an activist than just a record executive. I don't know if you remember, we even for a while managed Jesse Jackson, when Jesse Jackson was running for president.
84.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
I remember that. Yeah.
And we did things for him, like, you know, I did a syndicated radio show for him, and stuff. And so Dick sort of moved from, you know, a guy who was from Nashville that had run nightclubs and did concerts to becoming almost more of an international star. I mean, if you went with him like to Africa, if you go to like places like Southwest Africa, Namibia, the first president of Namibia, SWAPO, we bought computers and hired political consultants to get Sam Nujoma elected president. And so when Dick would go to Africa, he could go and stay like the equivalent of the State House, you know.
Wow.
We went to places like Liberia. We arrived in Liberia. The president was there to meet Dick and his entourage. I mean, it was a whole, on the continent of Africa, he was seen as one of the freedom fighters. And so he really loved Africa. And that love of Africa took away from his love of the music business.
Wow. Yeah. I remember that when that transition was happening, and I felt it too. I could feel it. It was a thing, even though I didn't have a very like close relationship with Dick Griffey, I could just feel that the Solar thing was sliding away from.
Yeah, it was just like it became reduced in its independence to him of going out and finding talent and stuff. And I really think that in Dick's mind, because, you know, we started Death Row Records.
Right.
And Dick used to say to me, you know, I think Suge Knight is like a young me. So I'm like, you know, and he's got his finger on the pulse of the way Black music is going with rap and hip hop. So I think what I'd like to do is help Suge get his company up and going, you know, and originally he was partners with Suge,
right,
and Doc and Dre. And his view was, I'll give them advice and counsel. That will be kind of like the new thrust of where the music business is going. And I can be a consultant with that and then do the things I want to do in Africa.
Right. I remember that.
Well,
didn't work out.
I wanted to ask just for a quick second, going back to the OAU and apartheid and things like that. Would you guys, even at the time of growing up, I grew up in the 80s. I was born in 74, and I grew up during the whole Reagan era and him being against, actually being for apartheid at the time. Were you guys kind of looked at through the presidential eyes as a threat? I mean, considering that the impact of the music and the label that was so impactful in Africa at the time, or were you guys looked at as a threat through the Reagan administration, anything like that?
Well, the answer is, in hindsight, the answer to that is yes. Because when we sold the building to Babyface and he went in and started doing some reconstruction, they found all kinds of hidden mics in Dick's office that were put there by the FBI. We did when I was doing, you know, foreign license deals, we did a foreign license deal with Zamba Records, which was originally started in South Africa. And after I did the deal with them, and everybody, Solar was a hot label, so everybody wanted to distribute Solar. So in South Africa, CBS wanted to distribute, you know, CBS affiliate, the Warner Brothers affiliate, they all wanted Solar. And so we were making deals at Medem, and these two little guys came up who owned Zamba Records. It was like Clive Calder and his partner. What was his partner's name? Clive. It was Clive. Damn, I know the senior. No, it was the guy who later on became, for a moment, he became president of Capitol Records. But anyway, they came, and they were the only company in South Africa that had black and white artists record together. They could not record together in South Africa, so they had a mobile studio that they took to Botswana, which is right next door, and so they
Oh
would
my God.
they'd have white
Ah.
artists record with black artists. And so when I heard that, I
That
said, okay.
studio is amazing.
I said, so I said, all right, well, I'm gonna give you guys our catalog because you're doing things with black South Africans as well as white South Africans. So they became our distributor, and they paid us like a low advance, like $25,000, which is, you know, a nominal advance. And other people wanted to pay six figures. But I said, hey, this is consistent with what we want to do as a black label. So about 2 months later, I get a phone call. It's Ralph from Ralph. What was Ralph's last name? Ralph. Can't remember his last name. Anyway, he called me and said, I got to come to LA to talk to you. I said, well, you know, he said, I can't talk to you over the phone. So he flew to Los Angeles and he said, the reason I wanted to come and tell you is that Griffey is being targeted by the South African secret police. They have banned all solar music from the radio. We can't play any of your records on the radio. Stores are afraid to carry the product because you've been banned by the South African government. You know, and they know that Griffey's been talking to OAU and stuff. So I said, Ralph, no problem. What I agreed is I said, I'll give you your money back. I gave him the $25,000 back. And we didn't have anybody representing us in South Africa because the records are not allowed to be played on the radio because Griffey was known as being an advocate to end apartheid. So yeah, there was that influence. And, you know, Ralph said, and, you know, you got to be careful because they send out assassins to knock off people who are opposed to the apartheid regime.
Yes, they did.
Yeah.
I was there when, yes.
So,
yes, they did.
So the answer is, yeah, you know, Dick had attracted the attention of the government. And they even went so far as to go to Jesse Jackson, this is the FBI, and said, you need to dissociate yourself from Dick Griffey. You know, and they told Jay, said, you know, he's a drug dealer. He's got a bad reputation, you know, and you should not have anything to do with him.
Wow, that's some COINTELPRO stuff, right?
Yeah, it was COINTELPRO stuff. But yeah, so that actually happened.
So now my thinking is this. I thought from Dick's point, now, you know, my mind is small. I got a small mindset. So as a young man, I was only 22 years old, but I thought as a young 22-year-old, we're traveling around the world. We're doing the Solar Galaxy of Stars tour. And I thought, man, we have really blessed this man. Look how happy he is when he comes to the concerts, you know, and we're playing all the records that we did and everybody's happy. I thought that was Dick's like proudest moments. But, you know, to hear what you just said, it's like that was like pennies compared to the story you just shared.
Yeah, what it was is you were, as all of us, you know, we all have the playpens we play in, and that becomes your world. But like the concert business was a terrible business. In fact, I convinced Dick to get out of it. It was a terrible business.
Oh,
because you know, the amount of money that you made wasn't worth the risk that you took. You know, like Dick was a big promoter, and what I think finally got him to agree that we would get out of the concert promotion business. We did the Off the Wall tour with the Jacksons, which you may remember. That was, you know, Michael did. And Michael was a fantastic performer. You know, so we did this show. There was one trick he did in that show that was really amazing because the finale act would be, you know, off the wall. And what you have is you have Michael performing. and then there'd be like a big explosion, fireworks and stuff. There'd be an elevator in the stage. He would go down the elevator in the stage, run over to the side, and then take an elevator up to the top of a wall. And when the smoke cleared, there would be Michael off the wall, performing. So we did 20 dates. The first Black Act, we did 4 sold out dates at the Forum. And when we finally sold up after the show was over, we made, I don't know what we grossed because we did 20 dates that were all sold out around the country. And we ended up making $25,000.
What?
Profit.
That's not good. That's a lot of work.
But because what happens is when you do shows back in those days, the big acts, they would get a big guarantee against the split of 90-10. They would get 90% of the profits. You as a promoter would get 10% of the profits, but you had to take care of all the expenses. So on that tour, we had a sold out date in Indianapolis, and then Michael would get sick. Michael always gets sick. He got sick, and so the night of the show, we had to cancel the show. It would have been a show where we probably, would have had maybe, it was a big stadium date, so we would have 50, 60,000 people at the show. But we already rented the building. We paid for all the advertising. Back in those days, you had to pay for ticketing and stuff. And then Michael couldn't show, so we had to refund all the money. And so we probably lost on that one show maybe $250,000. That was all the profit in the tour. A loss in one show.
Oh my God.
And so that's always the way it had become in the touring business. And we even tried to do the last big Jackson concert tour. We bid on that show too. We're going to do it in a joint venture with Irving Azoff. And we offered the Jacksons something like, I don't remember, maybe it's a $20 million guarantee, which was, a lot of money back in those days. It was in the like 82, something like that, 82, 83.
Wow.
And we got outbid by a guy named Sullivan who owned the Patriots. And what he had done, because he was an NFL owner, they put the show in stadiums that were owned by the NFL owners. And they gave the Jacksons like a guarantee of something more like $50 million. So naturally, they didn't take our offer. But they went out and the show lost so much money that the Sullivans had to sell the Patriots to pay the debts for what they lost on the show. But so the touring business, there's a reason you don't see a lot of independent promoters now. You have basically just AEG and Live Nation, because in order to make money doing tours, it's almost like selling life insurance. If I sold 100 life insurance policies, I might end up losing my shirt because people could die. But if I sold 1,000, then some people would die young, some people would die late, and so the premiums you can make money. So what you have is AEG and Live Nation. They own or control most of the buildings where concerts are, and so they can make money because they control everything in the building. So if you go to a show at a concert now, it might cost you as much as $100 to park your car at the building. Well, because they control the building, they get that money. They control the concessions, so they get that money. But when you're a promoter, you don't control the building. You just pay rent, and you don't get any of the popcorn and parking money because that's controlled by the building. You just get the money for ticket sales.
Wow.
And maybe some merchandise sales. So you can't compete with what AEG or Live Nation can do, because they can do a show and lose money on the show because they may not get all the ticket sales, but they're gonna make money on the popcorn and concessions. Because otherwise the building sits empty. If you have a building that's empty, it's making no money.
Right.
Put a show in there, even if the show itself doesn't make money, you still get the money from the parking and the concessions and stuff.
Right.
And so if you're running the building, then you may lose money on the show, but on your overall bottom line of making money from renting out the building, you're gonna make money.
Yeah.
So that's what you see now. You see like a couple of big concert promoters, and the only thing you can make money on if you're doing something independently is maybe if you do a big festival, you know, where you can get 100,000 people over a weekend or something to come to a festival. You can do that independently and maybe make money, but just doing your regular run-of-the-mill shows, you can't make money. So we got out of that business.
Well, amen. I see why. I see why now. And Don Fleming, in closing, what do you have for Virgil? We have to any questions in closing?
Well, I want to have I mean, all of these gems that you were dropping, man, it's just unbelievable. And I'm a fan, and I'm just here listening like a 13-year-old, just, with that teacher that I had a crush on as far as, showing the, but anyway. But no, have a moment of levity.
Hey, Dan.
I just want to have a quick moment of levity, man.
Okay, we got Dana Myers in here.
Okay.
It was hard to do, boy. I tell you, didn't want to cooperate. Didn't want to take Safari, and then I already had Google, but it made me put it down again. Had to set up the microphone. Everything's like, we're just gonna be pissed.
Man, you should have seen us in the beginning of the show.
Virgil, it's so good seeing you, man. It's so good seeing you, Virgil.
It's good to see you, man. You look good, Dana.
When I call your office, I mean, it's great. I love Diane and them, but I never get a chance to talk to you. Because I always have to talk to somebody else to get, it's like,
So you just got to call Solar Radio when you tell us.
CIA or something to get to this kid.
Yeah,
Go ahead, Don.
No. Is there that again? I wanted to have a quick moment of levity because I wanted to pick your brain. As far as like a Solar song that you can listen to today, I'm sure there's a lot of them, but is there one in particular that like you just in the grocery store or in the elevator or things like that? Because again, sometimes that music will come through different type of outlets. Which one that you just really will bop your head to or still listen to today?
Rocksteady.
Wow. He has every songwriter from Solar waiting for his answer. So Rocksteady,
but there are so many songs that I hear because I have a radio on now that it's almost like it's Solar time. There's Solar records on all the time, and the music that came from the writers and stuff who work with Solar, all of it is like my music, because it's a music from a time when I was young. Like I said, when I first met Dick, he would come by my house because when I was a young guy, it may not seem like it now, I was really a party animal. I mean, when I said we had a party at my house,
no,
and we did. I used to go to Joe's. I used to go to Joe's swing shop every Friday and get the latest, hottest 45s that I would then play on Saturday for people to dance to at my house. So I still have a stack, and I still have a stack of 45s that I kept from those days because I really listen to music. Now, one of the negative effects of working in the music business is the longer I worked, the less I enjoyed the music. Because it's like, I don't know, it's like being a gynecologist. You work on pussies all day, you don't really want to see another one. And when you
you're just hearing it for so long. You know,
Yeah.
it's not like most people that get the record comes out and they hear it, oh, that's great. But you hear it like from the time it was a demo.
Yeah.
It's moving along, you go to the studio and somebody's putting this part on, they're just putting this part on.
Yeah.
Then it has to be mixed and mastered. And by that time, it's like, that's enough. I've heard that song enough. For
That's
life.
exactly. You hear it over and over again.
Right.
And then
Right.
It's like going to a concert, because, you know, having been to concert, I'm looking around to see, all right, who's doing the pyrotechnics? You know, where's the soundboard? Are they doing a good job of mixing the sound? Are the mics right? I mean, there are a whole series of things. It's like if you watch a magician and you know the tricks, you're not wowed by the tricks anymore.
You know what that reminds me of?
Right.
That reminds me of I don't know if you guys are familiar with Bruce's Millions, to where, you know, you spend so much money, you just get tired of it. You know, it's like all of this money, you know, it's like everybody wants to have money, but until someone gives you all of this money to try to spend, it becomes sickening. So I totally get where you're coming from.
Yeah, it's just, you know, because, you know, in the Solar heyday, everybody was producing hit after hit after hit.
It was amazing.
Yeah.
And the fact that we're here talking about it now, that it still exists, and that it's like, you know, I mean, that it's lasted and it's made it to the test of time is amazing, because everything doesn't go down that way. You know,
No.
It's amazing. So
No, you know, we're talking about music that was created that has a life, you know, going on 50 years. You know, it's half a century. It's half a century. You know,
it is.
and
you put it like that. Wow.
Yeah, I mean it is, and you don't realize it till you talk to kids.
Yeah, I was feeling old enough earlier, and you're talking to Wardell, but now that you put 50 years on the song, now I really feel old. How old are you? Well, I wrote some songs 50 years ago that was, you know, wow. My teeth are starting to fall out. Just thinking about it. But it has been that long. I mean,
it's been that long. I mean, you know, so you know, you forget about it. But I have grandchildren, and so for them, it really is. You know, it's like you were alive then.
Wow.
I mean, you know,
and make you go, what?
Did you go to work in a covered wagon?
But what it means is that you were involved in creating things that live like almost forever.
Yeah.
And that's a remarkable thing. And you don't think about it, because like you said, well, I was 22 years old. Yeah, but you're not 22 now.
I know, and it's still going. The Whispers are still performing those songs.
They're still performing. Those guys they're in their 80s.
You know, I'm late. I'm late to this conversation because I was on the phone. Somebody called me again to talk about this stuff. Yeah. I get it every day. I get calls every day.
Yeah.
People are into it that much. I have constantly do interviews, and people want to know about, you know, basically because I mean, we did things when technology was completely different, so they want to know about that. It wasn't, you know, there's a bunch of people in a room. Wardell hit his sticks together 4 times. We played the stuff down. If somebody made a mistake, you started over again. There was no computer.
No auto tune.
No auto tune. Yeah.
No.
Leon Silvers was the auto tune.
Right.
One more time. Oh yeah. It was.
Yeah. I mean, there's a whole different creative process. You know, there are guys like Gene Page, who used to do all of the sessions, all the string sessions. You know, you had to have a contractor who could write charts. A lot of the music that we made was created by people who didn't write music.
Right.
So we literally in the old days, to copyright a song, you could not send in a tape. You had to send in a lead sheet.
Right.
So we literally would have people like Glenn Davis could do this. Glenn Davis was a copyist. Glenn could they had to listen to the music and then write the notes down
Right.
on a lead sheet so you could get it copyrighted. So there are whole groups of people who lost their jobs as technology moved on, because now with Pro Tools, the music is there. So like a guy like Gene used to make a few $100,000 a year just doing string dates,
Right.
because he would be the contractor
Gene Dozier?
that would go get the musicians and stuff. And then you had to have a studio room big enough to put all those musicians in to do the strings. So, you do an album, and then when the album was finished, that's when you do the strings and stuff that would be the sweetener. And so you'd have like a string date. You'd book these musicians, they were all triple session musicians, and they would come in, and in 3 hours, they could do all the string parts for the entire album. Just do one song one after the other. But you had to have somebody write the charts for them to play, because they're like, orchestral musicians.
Right.
So they're used to having strings. It wasn't like, give me this sound. I want something that's a little fatter and stuff. You had to write it out. So you had to hire somebody to write it out to do it. None of that you do today.
Yeah. I was just listening to Adventures in the what was the Wardell, the arranger? He's our friend. I feel it's the age thing.
Oh yeah.
Adventures in Atlanta Music.
Yeah,
Adventures in Atlanta Music. What was it?
Virgil, I had him on not that long ago. He was what's his name?
I can't figure it. We can't even think of it. It's not
I
Crawford.
know, but
not Crawford.
It's no. But he's a black guy with the long hair. He was amazing, and he still is. He still. Do you know he still does stuff? I'm like, dude, how old are you? I'm not that much older than you. Or I go, okay, thanks.
I mean,
but yeah, he's still doing. He's still doing it, and
that's why I really appreciate people like you, Virgil, because I used to come up to the office all the time because I needed to know what happens after.
Right.
After the groove's in, after it's turned in. So I would be in and out of different people's offices up there just to know, and that's the good thing about Solar, is that nobody was unapproachable there.
Yeah.
I was at Motown. When I was at Motown, you couldn't get to nobody. Everybody had their own bodyguards and everything.
But that's because Barry was paranoid.
Yeah.
because he'd had a number of mafioso folks try and take a hit out on him.
Wow.
And two, and it was just his nature. He didn't really trust anybody.
And you guys were the opposite. You actually would stop and teach us stuff so that we would know, how the business works. It's like, no, you don't understand. You're the artist or something. This is what actually happens. This needs to happen, and then this needs to happen, and then because those misunderstandings sometimes can make really problems, especially with band guys that think, well, I should, and they don't understand, what it takes.
Don't understand the business.
And it takes it. So now, it's still problems because now there's a new model, and I talked to the other guys that we worked with over the years, and the other groups. I won't say the names, but it's a new model now, and a lot of them are still in 2-inch tape time, and you can't get them to understand what now. It's a different thing that it takes to make this happen and that happen. And if you want to keep doing music and you want to put some stuff out there, if you got to deal with the new model, because it's not the same thing. But it's always with creative people, it's difficult for them to latch on to the stuff that has to happen after the music's made.
Yes. Yes.
Always.
So we have to let Virgil go because I know it's another meeting.
I'm just not seeing Virgil. Come on, man.
Yeah. You got here late. You late to the party.
I'm late to the party. Man.
Yeah, you late to the party. You missed the nickel.
But Virgil,
we'll do it again. We'll do it again, Wardell.
All right. So in closing, Virgil, I want you to just, in closing, I just like for you to just say whatever it is that comes to your heart that you like to share with us writers and producers or whoever it is, or just the general public.
Well, the one thing that I want to share, and I'm glad that Dana came on, is I've always believed, as we we're talking about earlier, that it's really important to share information with our community. And so that was one of the things that I tried to bring to Solar, and that's one of the reasons I wanted to make sure the company was open to explain the business that people are in, because there's a creative side and there's a business side. And as a creative, you need to know the business, because there's an old saying: a fool and his money will soon be separated. You end up being the fool without the money. And so a lot of creative people, and I see this all the time, they've been in the business, but they don't know the business. And so I really encourage everybody who's a creative to learn a little bit about the business, because it continues to change.
Yeah,
And it's more difficult now than it's ever been if you are an artist to make money in the music business. And I'll just leave you with some numbers that explains why. It used to be, let's say 30 years ago, there might be in a given year 40,000 albums released. And you might have as many as 50 or 60,000 singles. You have one or two singles for every album that was released. Today, there are over 150,000 records released every day.
Jeez.
And because so there's a tsunami of music, and it's almost impossible to get heard. The other thing is, now it's a streaming business. When we're selling physical records, a single 45 would sell for $1, $1.19, let's say, at retail, maybe 80 or 90 cents at wholesale. So there was real money. Now for a stream, people are buying a subscription service, or sometimes they're listening for free. And so the consumer has gotten used to not paying anything for music. And what that is made it almost impossible for artists to make money selling music. It's just a very different business. And so you got to really understand and know what's going on in the business if you're trying to make a living doing it. So with that will end the conversation for today.
Wow.
Schedule me to come back, Wardell, and we can have more conversation. We talked about a little bit about the past. We can talk about the present and the future.
Okay. Part 2 and part 3. Well, thank you, Virgil, so much.
We need to have a Virgil school. I would like to go to a Virgil school right now, if it's possible, because there's a lot I need to know about that. I'm really confused about what goes on now. I mean, I study it, but it's beyond me. So I would love to talk to you about that someday.
Yeah. Well, let's try and figure out how to do that. But Wardell, I'll be happy to come back to your show and talk about it. Thank
you so much, Virgil.
All right, good to see y'all. Dana, it's good to see you in full living color. Don, it's good to meet you.
All right, Virgil.
All right, talk to you.
Okay.
All right, now take care.
All right. So Dana Myers is in the house, guys.
And that's his ending. I mean, he's right. It's like this thing you have to. I mean, it's I've been watching YouTube. These young people will talk about how I make money as a songwriter, kind of thing, right? And they mention these places, that you set up this, and they talk about everything they tried. If they signed a publishing deal, if they were a record company, how it failed for them, and how they ended up making some amazing. I mean, but how much you got to do a lot of work though. There's these different things you can set up. You make up your own thing, and I try to watch as many of them as I can, but I know personally I need to get some product before I really jump into that. But I have to stop and watch it sometimes and see, and I listen to them, and I understand it, but I'm also thinking, man, that is so alien to the way things have been over the years. What you have to do now, it's like, I mean, you really need to be Virgil and Dick and Glenn and all of those people. You have to be all of those folks now on your own. Because you got to go do this, you got to go set this up over here, you got to do this. You got to set this up right so that you get paid. You got to do this. And you got to wear all of these different hats and sell these different hats separately. You know, there's one chick I listened to her. She was like, you know, she's a songwriter and an artist, and she gets paid for finishing people's songs up or writing hooks for people or singing on people's stuff, or, you know what I mean? Or she there's like different things that she does. You know, there's a list of things. So before we, you know, all of us probably did this stuff, but it was being out there in real lifetime. You know, you're at the studio someplace, or somebody calls you to do a session, you know, come to Studio Masters and I want you to do these backgrounds for so and so artist, or can you put this bridge on it for me? But you're in person with somebody talking about this, and we're out in the real world at somebody's house. You're on the phone, you're at the studio. Now there's like you set yourself up, and there's this grocery list of things you put up there that of what your talents are, what you can do, and then people connect with you to get what it is that they need. So it's so impersonal. But also, when I heard the money that they were talking about, I said, man, okay, I really gotta, you know, I can't jump in there right now because I'm not personally ready to do all of these different things, but I got to get some product. I got to finish these songs and stuff. But when I heard the money that they're making per month and what what they're net satisfied with, and I started putting that together yearly, it's like, man, if you can do that, and these are people I never heard of, and they're working for some of everybody. Some of different people come to their site and get them to do this and do that and stuff. And she named some of the people, you know, bigger artists and stuff that she was working with, but I never heard of her in my life. But if you get people to know that you exist and that you do this and you do this and you do this and how much you charge for it, you know, she said she had to get used to too after she was doing it for too little for a long time, you know, as far as like and also for like when people want you to do something over again, you know, you also have to set your limits for that, for how many times you get that you'll do a track over or something, you know. But it's not in real time with real people like we're used to, you know, looking at somebody in a room and stuff. It's somebody clicking off with the mouse what they need from you, you know, and you know, it's a list like that. So it's totally different, but making serious money.
Yes.
You know, so I mean, it's just about letting people know that this is what you do, you know, and the world is so, you know, you can, everything is so, what music is. I mean, you used to know about it, even if you didn't want to. In the 80s and 90s, early 2000s, you knew everybody types of music. It was on your radio.
Sorry.
You know, you knew different people, country or what, or reggae, whatever it is. If it was big, you knew about it, even if you didn't want to. Now you got to hunt it out. You got to hunt it out. And there's people with, you know, with big, you can't even call them records anymore, but they have a big product that's doing a lot, and people are buying it from them and stuff. But you don't even know about it because there's no billboard on the strip or any of that stuff anymore. You know, there's nothing telling you that, you know, only the few people still with major records like you know, what's the blind chick that's big that's going with the football player? I can't figure her name right now, but she's the only one I can think of that's you know, one of those kind of people. You know, the girl I'm talking about, she's blonde, she's country, but country pop, but I can't think of her name. But anyway, you know, if you got somebody huge,
Taylor Swift.
Yeah, Taylor Swift. But there aren't that many of them. You know, Lady Gaga and Bruno Mars, and you know what I mean? So, but there's other people with followings that is really successful, you know, that's making a lot of money and they're successful to a lot of people. And it's a lot of people, but it's just their people. And we don't know about it. So, but you know what? I don't care. I don't need to be in a Billboard strip if I've sold something that's 1 million. You know, if only those people that bought it know about it, but it's that popular, I'm good with that. Because even look at even the popularity that we have now, even at Solar, the old stuff. I mean, nobody knows that, but the people that are into it.
There you go.
You know what I mean? We know that a lot of people know, and that people are at us all the time, and that we do interviews, and people are still buying the old stuff and listening to the old stuff. And I mean, I'd be on the street selling pencils if they weren't still buying it. You know, you know what I mean? I'd be like, please, sir, could you spare a crust of bread? You know, I'd be one of those cats, you know. But they're still buying the stuff. Somebody, you know, airplay, but still, and I meant to ask Virgil about it, but he had to go. Still somebody's buying stuff too, because I get mechanical royalties. You know, I get royalties twice a year that are from sales. So I don't know how that comes down. You know what I mean? I know streaming is, you know, you got to have 1 billion streams for anything. And so that's not happening. But there's still radio, which is amazing. You know, I thought radio would be dead by now, but there's still radio. So my ASCAPs are great. But somebody is still buying, you know, greatest hits packages or something. I don't know what it is, because I don't have anything new. Oh, I do. There's the girl, that the black girl from Great Britain that put out "This Is for the Loving You," but it's called "This Is" or something. So that's a major part of why I've got, you know, songwriting and royalties, not airplay, because, you know, her record was big. But above and beyond that, you know, when I see, you know, I see the titles from, you know, of the old stuff come up, and I see it, and it's just it's played, you know, especially overseas, you know, in Europe, and in the UK, and in Europe, and in South America, and in Africa, and some we are played still and looked at. There's a guy on Facebook that contacts me. He's from Lima, Peru. You know, I never thought I'd be talking to anybody, but I was like, how do you know, you wouldn't think. I think about llamas and stuff. I don't think about anybody listening to R&B music, you know, in Peru. But we got fans over the decades. People have locked into the music after the fact, because these are people in their 20s and 30s.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It's like they weren't born when we were doing this stuff. So it's a whole new set of people who figured out, you know, oh, how do you know that song? You know, so, you know, it's like, and their parents or grandparents are telling them, well, because I heard the original. That's not, you know, that's not the original. They're just you know, they sampled and are spewing profanity over the top of it.
Wow.
That's not the original song, you know. And then they hear the original, and then suddenly, you know, we're hot again. Us old guys is somebody, you know, that they know. And I get these calls, man. You know, I constantly get these calls for people wanting to talk to me. These 20-year-olds who want to talk to me, you know, who have, you know, who have video radio shows just like you guys, you know, but they weren't born when, you know, or they were 4 or 5 when this stuff came out. And
hold on, Dana. Hold on.
So many things in life can hold you down, but I set out to prove that I could make it. I had no fear of being pushed around. My confidence was something no one could take away. From the start, I make the grade. Believing is the way. I found the master plan that gave me the winning hand. Now I'm on top of the world. The time is right for dreams to come true. To start my life anew. On top of the world. On top of the world. This time will nothing bring me down. No turning back. Believe your dream will come alive.
oh, think about the grid.
If the darkness should come before the light, just keep on moving straight ahead and you will find the brighter side of life.
Okay.
All right, Dana.
Yeah, me and Richard Randolph. It was me and Richard Randolph. You know, because everything was so busy, I actually produced Howard's vocal on this, right? Because Leon was busy mixing stuff. So
Mhm.
I was in the studio. I finished the lyrics up and I came thinking I was just going to drop them off and go back home. It was Thursday afternoon. I didn't leave until Saturday evening or something. No, Thursday evening.
What?
I didn't leave till Saturday afternoon. Every time I thought I was going home, Leon would say, "Oh, you got to do clean up. You got to do overdub Pepper's guitar part, or it ain't gonna make the record. It ain't gonna make the record." So it's like, okay, I want my tune on there. So I'm in there, and he was like,
And then he leaves and goes to the basketball game.
no, he was mixing a lyric, and but then he would come back, and I think, okay, I'm getting ready to go home. It's like, and so, I gotta finish this mix. Howard, you gotta do Howard's vocal. It's like, wait a minute, I'm gonna produce the lead vocal. It's like, am I ready for that? It's like, so it's like that was just something that I had no idea was going to happen. I was again thrown on the deep end real fast. So we had fun, great fun doing it. Me and Howard. Robert Brown was the engineer.
Don't mention
We had fun. We had fun doing it, but
Bob Brown.
I never had no idea that was going to happen. I thought I was going to drop the lyrics off, leave. I ended up doing. I think I did Jody's background vocals too. I was in there for days, doing this song, And
Don Fleming, you have any questions for Dana?
I'm good.
You played that. You played that, and memories just started flowing back in. It's like I remembered sitting there. That feeling if you've been in the studio too long. You're dehydrated and you're sleepy, but you're not sleepy because you've been drinking lots of coffee and Coca-Cola. So you're tired.
There's a point in your life. Again, when I talk about Solar, I talk about, certain points, certain songs that it was a soundtrack of your life. I'm trying to gaslight or anything. I'm just being honest because I remember and the beat goes on in kindergarten. You think about.
Oh God, no!
You pinpoint. Yes, you pinpoint those moments, and it's like, oh my God, yeah. And now, 40 plus years later, I'm only 50, so 40 plus years later, you're just like, oh wow, I was on my way to go see Rocky 3, and this was on the radio, and we were jamming in the back of the station wagon.
Let me give you a story that you might really like that you couldn't know about. And the Beat Goes On, right? Okay, Wardell was there the whole day, because he played the drum. Okay, but there was a group called Myers, Philpott, and Woods, right?
Mm-hmm.
And Leon put us together. That's how I came. At first, they tried to have me in Shalimar, but I was too sick. That was like 78 or something. So 79 or so, I get back from Japan, and Leon puts me, in this group, Myers, Philpott, and Woods. So the song he tested our voices out on was "And the Beat Goes On." Will Shelby came by my apartment. They had a little Wurlitzer, and Leon and Will tested our voices out, our blends, "And the Beat Goes On." So that was for Myers, Philpott, and Woods.
Mm-hmm.
We went. Norman Whitfield gave us free studio time, or gave Leon free studio time at Fort Knox. That was the studio Norman Whitfield owned at the time. So we went to the rehearsal hall, Doo-Doo Records, at like 8 a.m. to pick up all of the equipment stuff, right, and take it to that studio, and started probably at 12. We went from probably 12 in the afternoon to 12 at night or something, right? And I mean, I had the flu. I had all these tissues, and so I only ended up singing on one song, this ballad that Stevie Shockley had written and stuff. But "And the Beat Goes On" was for us. There was another song at the time that was called "Saddle Up." It ended up becoming "Out the Box." Though both of those two songs ended up going on the Whispers, because after the fact, Leon played them for Dick Griffey. He heard them, snatched them, and it was history. It was top 20 like within weeks. I mean, that was one of the fastest moving songs. I couldn't believe it. I was just numb. I didn't want to be mad or nothing. I was just numb. And then So that was supposed to be our song. We would have been the number.
Oh man,
we would have been the #1 group on Solar, and because we couldn't have screwed it up. I
Mhm.
mean, a song is about a song sometimes, and that was about the song that made it. So, and here's what makes it worse. A year later, somebody had stolen my little car. I was taking 3 buses to work, right, and 2 buses to the studio at night. So I was working on. People would ask me on my breaks what I was doing. I had a little, you know, boombox thing, and I was working on lyrics. What are you doing? I said, oh, I'm in this group on Solar, Myers Still Park Woods. And I'm finishing up the lyrics, for me. It's a love thing I was finishing up, right? So again, our song, I'm finishing it up for me. I'm singing this one. I already know what's happening with it. So I come into the studio one day, Leon calls me, I gotta talk to you, man. About the tune, man. Dick heard the shit, and I couldn't say no. So that's how that went down. So there were 2 hits in a row on the Whispers. 2 hits to fly up the charts would have been ours. And you never know if it could have flopped, but I don't see how. Again, because the songs themselves, and I got a Wardell's heard it. I have a tape of me without the strings and stuff singing.
Okay.
It's a love thing, to the track. The strings and horns aren't, the stuff aren't on it yet, but or are they? Something's not on it. Some stuff is on there, but some stuff isn't. But anyway, so you can hear that, like, it wouldn't have changed anything. I mean, I sound so much like what Scotty ended up sounding like on the tune that one day I still have it. I'll play it for you one day, or I'll send it to you. I'll send you the MP3, and you'll see. Me and Leon went and Will Shelby went in and sung it, did the guide vocal, and I sung the regular part. Leon sung the part. It's a love thing that goes up, and then Leon sang that part, and the 3 of us did the backgrounds. We did all this at one time. We had the hand claps and sung the lead in the backgrounds at the same time while we were clapping our hands. So it's amazing that any of this is pocket, because we were talking about walking and chewing gum at the same time, but we were doing it all. But you hear the guy vocal and everything for it. You say, oh, that worked out. But my voice, it doesn't take anything away from the song. It sounds like it's not doubled. It's just me singing it once. So if I had doubled me the way that, because we were doubling stuff back then. We doubled all the leads all the Solar stuff early on. We doubled, and one was just pulled back. So if I actually sung it for real, same thing would happen. I would have doubled. Leon would have had me double my voice and then have it on. So, but other than that, you'll hear it. You see what I'm saying.
These are amazing stories. These are amazing. It's almost kind of like a 6 degrees of separation type thing when it comes to how a song was made and who sang it first and how did it end up going on the charts and things like that. I love hearing stories that.
What you call it? What's the song? Wardell, what's the Dynasty song that was Midnight Stars at first?
Here is it here? Not is it Here I Am?
Yeah, Here I Am. Yeah, so it's like, I mean, you just never, things just happen. It's just like Dick decided that sounded like Dynasty to him. So things just happen constantly, day in and day out. You never know until it's over with and the record's out. You don't know. I would work on songs, man, and I didn't know who the other writers were until it came out, and I read until I read it, because we would just like do stuff. It was a workshop, and we were working at stuff day and night, day in, day out, and people would stop me in the coffee room and say, "Dana, I can't hear a melody for this bridge." And I would just hear it, and I was seeing something across it, and maybe that would be on somebody's record, but because that's just how we did stuff. We just assembly line stuff. I would just in jest, but because it was just who I was, somebody would be playing their groove in the coffee room of Studio Masters, and I would just sing some silly stuff across it,
And you dawned about a little bit about the whole generational thing. When you're saying young kids are listening to it, they weren't even born. The crazy part of that, me and Wardell have these conversations all the time because I'm a gamer. And I hear these songs, and some of my former students, they'll play something like, I don't know if you're familiar with Grand Theft Auto, the video game.
I've never played, but I know of it, yeah.
But the songs, certain songs from, the Whispers. And,
I didn't know that. I don't know that had songs came in.
Yeah, so I tell Wardell's like, what? Wait a minute, that's on, But yeah, a lot of kids, again, you go down the rabbit hole of YouTube, but also there are other outlets like the video games now, because, growing up, you and I, during the Atari days or Nintendo days, it was just electronic music. It wasn't, licensed or anything like that. Right. But now it's straight up music that you hear when you get in the car in the video game.
I had no idea. See, I'm still, even if you say a video game, I'm still thinking that.
Yeah, exactly.
Because I haven't played one or seen anybody play a video game in decades. So you're telling me this, that explains a lot. That explains, again, when I look at the royalties for airplay or stuff, that explains it.
Mm-hmm.
Some of this stuff that explains where some of this stuff has come from, because music, that's why I love being a songwriter, man. Music is even on a toy, little toys have music in them. You can't escape music. It's on television. You're walking in the street, somebody's car's going by, music is in everything. And it's a great escape because so much crazy stuff is going on right now in the world. If we didn't have music, we would all be running around lunatics doing all kinds of crazy stuff, because you know what I mean? Because but you got that to go back to. I mean, that's why I know I'm truly blessed, because I cannot trip on what some of the stuff I hear about. People tell me, do you know what he did this today? What laws from the 60s have gone back and been changed. It's like, I don't even, but people tell me. I don't stick up when people tell you stuff, and so instead of that driving me nuts like it did at one point or another, I can just go and work on some music.
And that's the thing, man. I want you, I'm very concerned about people, of course, who write the technicalities behind it, who writes on the music, who produce it or whatever, to able to get their royalties, especially if a game if a song just happens to be on a video game. I'm a big advocate for that, because a lot of people don't know it. We interviewed
ASCAP does, though. I mean, that's the thing.
Yeah.
ASCAP and BMI know, and they go, anytime anybody's playing any music anywhere, they're going to find out, did you call and license that with us? And if not, you got a problem, So they especially on stuff like that, or, YouTube, something big, or those games, because that's a major thing. I mean, that's like those video games. That's good.
Yeah,
that's amazing. If you're somebody who programmed one of those games, your paychecks are looking really nice. Did it so. So if they're putting that music in there, ASCAP, they have to go for that. I mean,
what was the drummer's name?
Huh?
Don?
What was the drummer's name?
That wrote that song.
Was it Tony Westcott?
No.
The drummer. I'm joking, man.
No, the drummer that wrote, Dana, he was in the group, the Gap Band.
Yeah, Raymond.
Yeah.
Outstanding. His tune outstanding.
Right. And he's got I think Don, you were the one who told him.
It's on NBA. It's on one of the NBA 2K games.
There you go.
So again, Fantastic Voyage is on Grand Theft Auto San Andreas, and The Beat Goes On is on Vice City. As a matter of fact, they're really hyping up Grand Theft Auto 6, which is coming out next year. And a lot of people are anticipating, what songs are going to be on there, but a lot of people don't know because of the NDAs. A lot of people sign. So once that's out, man, hey, you find out if that's something that you wrote on, Danny. Hey, get on that.
Wow. Okay.
Get on that.
Yeah, because that's a great thing, is that they're using the songs. Me and Will had It's a Love Thing was for a year, was on like a commercial for the makeup.
Yeah. I remember that.
Mary J. Blige redid a night to remember, and it was on one of those Think Like a Man 2.
Uh-huh.
I mean, you know, there it is. Was on Widows. It was in that movie Widows and stuff. So it's like, and I was telling Wardell, I just got a call working with Janet Cole. I don't know if she's been on you guys' show before, probably, right? Or maybe not. But anyway, she's one of the songwriters from the Silver Spoon era.
No,
She called
she has.
to do to
She's
write a
called-
song for this good. They're doing something for like the Goonies or something. You know, so I mean, we're gonna put like we're working on this sound is, you know, synth pop sound. You know, that whole thing that was happening in the 80s because we wanted that, you know, the MTV sound. So I'm a really happy guy right now because I'm working on stuff.
That sound is coming back.
I'm working on stuff for movies and TV and commercials, and that's what they want, retro.
That sound is coming back.
The producers for various companies that work on stuff that put stuff in movies have asked me for the songs that sound like songs from the 50s, 60s, 70s, 80s, and 90s. That means I can write anything. I mean, they didn't say, you know, 30s and stuff like, you know, but I'm sure if I wrote something that sounded like Duke Ellington, they find a use for it because I've seen that stuff in movies and stuff too, you know. So, but they want stuff like that, not copies, but because they have to pay so much to original artists. You know, $500,000, you know, for a song that's coming out of a car radio, and you know that's on there that long, and they don't want to do that, so they want us to write some stuff that sounds like songs from the different eras, you know, for that, you know. So that for me, that's fun. You know what I mean? It's the most fun. While I've been doing this, it's the most fun maybe I've had. I haven't had this kind of fun since the 80s.
I think the kids now, I think in some of the blog rooms and things like that, they're anticipating what songs are going on what songs are going to be on the new Grand Theft Auto game and things like that. And it's so funny because
I'm glad you hit me to this.
It's funny you're on. It's funny you're on because I wrote like a platypus song. As a matter of fact, I have one of your platypus songs on my workout tape. Can you tell? I'm a big dude. But no, seriously, I'm thinking, hey, love the way you funk or something like that. One of them songs got to be on that. And folks are like, you know what? That might be that might go be dope to have a old school platypus song on. Because I mean, if they go in the crates and find a group like Pleasure or something like that to go on the soundtrack, I wouldn't be surprised, man. So yeah. Get on that, man.
Yeah, and there's a lot of games out there too. I mean, there's a lot of stuff I don't even know the names.
Yeah. There's a lot of
like I said, ASCAP does. You know, if it's making money, they know where it is. I may not find it, but I would like to know this stuff just to know that it's because it's uplifting to know that.
And I think we asked
created is being used.
On, and we asked him about San Andreas and things like that. He said, he's like, I'm already on it. So Wardell.
All right, guys. Well, thank you for letting me
having lunch.
I know he's.
Let me. I got on a sad note. Wayne Lewis died today. What? Or you guys know?
Wayne Lewis,
Atlantic Star. Yeah.
Atlantic Star. Yeah.
Wayne.
Yeah. What? I just texted you about 2 hours ago about
today. Yeah, but it was the guy that was calling me about, that I was talking about, the young guy. He told me about it, and then I was looking on Facebook. We were talking, and it's and Scott Galloway and all those people have put stuff up there. I don't know from what. They never tell you from what anymore, but he's gone.
But he looks so healthy. He looks so healthy. He's been working out and just Jesus
I know, man.
Christ.
I know.
And so immediately you go back to thinking, I mean, it was fun hanging out with those guys. It was, there was no doubt, sometimes you have prima donna people to work with and stuff, and other times you have like great cats. It's like, oh, great. I always remember doing stuff with you because they were great, so Atlantic Star was one of those. They were great, huh?
I remember we worked on that album. Did you wrote any songs with them?
No, I didn't. You had me sing on something, and And just because we put together Quad Sync at the time, you know, they would come to whatever you and Joey is working on, but they would come to whatever studio when we and Zim was and stuff. I remember it was just we would all hang out and stuff, you know, and stuff.
Yeah,
I mean,
yeah.
even the last time I saw Jonathan, you know, that little
Lewis
club,
Brothers.
you know, that little club that we played in Santa Monica, the Amazon, you know, the
Yes.
what Jonathan came and came to see us there.
Wow.
You know, so I mean, everybody stayed friends, you know.
Yes.
And
yes.
every now and then I would see David, I think, someplace, but you know what I mean? So it's just, but they were all good. It's like Tavares and the Spinners and Gladys Knight. All of these people were the sweetest people in the world. You know what I mean? So you became friends with them. And it's like, so anytime you hear somebody pass, it's like, oh, even if you haven't seen them recently, the fact that you had so much time with them that was so negative, I mean, so positive, it just it's
so Dana, today, as I was looking at Facebook, or was it last night? I get them confused. It was either this morning or last night, and I was looking at Facebook and I saw Wayne's picture, and I thought, you know what? I need to call him and tell him if they need a drummer in case of an emergency.
And you didn't read what it said. You just looked at the picture, huh? You just looked at
I just looked at the picture.
Yeah, the picture was probably telling you then that he had passed, but you know,
I didn't even look. I just saw the picture and I was like, oh yeah, call Wayne.
I have to see about 3 or 4 pictures before I know that either it's somebody's birthday or they passed. If you just see one picture, it's just you know. But that's the whole thing. And then if you see another one, it's like, why I keep seeing pictures of so and so and so? And you're like, oh, it's their birthday. It's like, or you know, they passed. It's like so. But you know, I was like again shocked because you know I didn't hear nothing about him being ill or anything, and it looks good. So. You know, but again, that's why anytime we have any of these things, man, the dinners, the picnics, I don't care what it is, you know, if somebody from Solar and Silver Spoon or Soul Train, there's a get together, I go because you just don't know. I mean, I hate to be morbid or anything, but it's good to see people you like, you know, that you really care about, because you don't know if that's the last time or not, you know. So I go to anything. I used to not go to nothing, but if it's any of those things that I know there's going to be a lot of people that, you know, that we all of us hung out with and continue to be friends since the 80s. Solar, Silver Spoon, Soul Train, Mavericks Flat, you know, that's, you know, Dayton. That's a circle of things that involves a lot of the same people. You know what I mean? A lot of whoever, you know, even people who weren't signed to Solar, whether they came from Dayton, they came out. You know, I can name a bunch of them. They ended up being part of the family. They weren't, you know, Kevin Johnson and oh my God, my brain, the brain thing again. Parker, you know what I mean? Parker, you know, I mean, it's the Dayton connection. You can't bring Parker came out. And he played the bass, and I started humming. So we started writing together. I knew that there was a lot happening there. Everything we wrote together got placed because he played like Leon, right? He played melodic bass line, you know. So I said, everything we write, and it did. Everything we wrote together got placed. And here's Leon, you know, like all producers, they're creative, so they change stuff because they hear stuff a certain way.
Yeah.
He played our tune. How come again? I'm drawing a blank. Me and you and Parker for Dynasty. What was it? You ain't even old as me. Our tune. Me and you and Parker for Dynasty.
Oh yeah.
You're not even as old as me, and you're getting brain fog.
I don't have a brain fog. I just got too much. I got too much stuff in my brain.
What's the name? You play it. You play it on you guys' thing all the time. Even you should know because you guys play it all the time.
Does that ring a bell?
Does that ring a bell? With me and Parker. So Leon, we did the demo. Leon played the bass line note for note. That's how good the bass line was. He didn't change nothing. You know,
Yeah,
that's
it
a
was
good,
amazing.
that's a good, you know, that's a good bass line. Because he's a bass
Oh yeah,
player, not just a bass player, but a bass player who plays bass parts that bass players learn because you know what I mean? Because of you know, and the beat goes on and stuff. Those are bass line driven songs. So bass players learn those parts. You see them on YouTube all the time. People playing Leon's bass lines, you know. So that's, you know, he's the guy, you know, when it comes to that. So the fact I told Parker, I said, you gotta feel like I don't know what he played your bass line like you played it. I mean, that's the biggest, you know, that's the biggest
compliment.
thumbs up that you compliment you can get, man. It's like, you know what I mean?
Yep.
He's the king of melodic bass lines. You know, you know, this bass line makes the song, you know, kind of cat. Leon is the king of that. And he plays your bass line note for note. You should feel good for the rest of your life. You know, because I was waiting to see what he was going to change. Okay, let's see what he didn't change. He didn't change nothing. He didn't change my lyrics. He didn't change the melody. He didn't change the bass line. He didn't change your chords.
We wrote that song in the garage.
No, we were upstairs in a little room. Remember that?
Right. It was above the garage.
It was a mansion
because they were there. They were in
another room playing. They were in another room playing the big stuff. It was Charmaine had this big house up off Mulholland somehow and had 1 million rooms in it. And they were just, there was a bunch of, everybody was playing, and there was the big, you know, the big band in the room, and everybody was going. So when the three of us went and found a little room,
a little space,
little cubby hole.
That's funny.
Well, we couldn't hear what they were doing.
My Casio piano.
He had a little Casio piano that's about this big, you know, and Parker was playing his bass, not plugged in, and just me humming. And we wrote that song.
Piano was bigger than that.
It was about this big, man.
I mean, these are great. Great origin stories.
It had to be about this big.
Oh my God, I love
it. We were sitting on the floor, cross-legged and stuff. We weren't even on chairs and stuff.
We were on the floor.
We wrote that song, and we wrote it from. I did the lyrics later, but we did the music and the melody from beginning to end. Sitting there on the floor like that.
Yep, we sure did.
I mean, I wish somebody could have filmed it, you know, because and the fact you listen to that song when the song comes and you listen to it and you see it's so technical. You know what I mean? I mean, it's an R&B too, but it's got progressive band stuff in it. You know what I mean? You know, you know, from the you're not expecting, does that ring a bell? That bass, you know, it's like something Yes's bass player would have played, you know, but it worked in an R&B tune, you know, I think about that, and you don't remember everything where you were when you did stuff, but that was so odd. I'll never forget how we wrote that song. You know, just the three of us. I mean, just so you don't believe how close we were sitting, right? Because like I said, the bass wasn't plugged into nothing. You know, and Wardell had to have still the volume down. He wasn't blasting, obviously, because you wouldn't have heard the bass. So we're doing stuff. All this stuff is going on in the other room, you know, and we write this song from beginning to end. And so when that song comes on, I listen to it and I think, man, sometimes you got to pat yourself on the back, you know, because that's one of my favorite songs. It wasn't a single here; it was a single overseas. But you have your favorite songs that you think the most of, regardless as to what was hits and stuff. You know, A Night to Remember, and This Is for the Love in You, and all that stuff did stuff. But that's more my favorite song than out of any of them. You know, because I because it's just, and we remember we redid it even. You know, we redid it on oh God, now brain fog again. Joyce. Well, now she's Joyce Pierce because she married Pierce, the basketball player that played with Milwaukee and stuff. But now I can't remember her last name. Man, we redid it. We redid it for her. We demoed it. It never came out. And I seem to feel like somebody else did it stuff too. But I might redo it yet again because that's a great song. I think so I might cut it again. I played on the other one. On the one we did for Joyce, I played the electric auto harp on it. I haven't pulled that out since Platypus. I played.
Wow.
Hey, Dan, so okay, guys, so we have to shut down, and I
Okay.
just want to say in closing, Dana, is there anything you'd like to say in closing before we get going?
No, I mean, just I mean, everybody look forward to stuff again because we're like the leash is off again for us. What I mean, because we're too old to be artists and stuff, but people are coming to us for these songs for movies and TVs and stuff, and we still got it in us. So we're writing it, and who knows? Pretty soon we may have enough of that stuff to make as an album. I mean, that's a good album too. The Silver Spoon Solar guys stuff from movies and commercials and stuff. I mean, that's a package in itself. Just putting that stuff together. So and we've all got the and that stuff, and we all got people coming at us to do stuff. So we're writing this stuff for other stuff, and it's coming together. And that's all. I'm just happy. I'm a happy camper every day. The first of this year started off really messed up because the fire stopped 10 blocks from me.
Wow.
And I look at, they show the devastation. It looks like somebody dropped a bomb on Altadena and Pasadena, right? And it's 10 blocks from me. And at the time, I had what do you call it? A hernia. So I couldn't even move. I mean, driving was a pain. So if it really got any closer, I would have had, but I was just putting stuff in a bag and move. It was killing me. It's like if I moved the wrong way, it felt like somebody kicked me in the groin. So it's like
I'd like to say good
I was
evening
sitting
to
there.
everyone. Thanks for tuning in to.
What happened?
Sorry, Dan.
But anyway,
Nothing.
so I got through that 4 months of stuff. I got the operation and everything. Now I'm writing again. Wardell, we got to do some stuff together, because it's coming together. There's 4 or 5 publishing companies asking us for stuff. So I want to write with all the old guys again. Because we still got it in us, and it's fun. I still have loads of fun working with Wardell and Leon when I go to the studio, and I want to pull even the other cats who aren't doing it much, like Ricky Smith and stuff. I want everybody. This is a chance for us to do our thing together again, unleashed, because they're asking us for stuff. I've sat down, we met with one of the guys and one of the publishers at Leon's studio. We played him stuff, and he loved everything we played. So it's not even having to worry about it, or for years it's been like nobody really wanted to hear nothing new we came up with. Now it's turned down again. We're back in vogue again. We got to take advantage of it for as long as it lasts. That they're looking at us again as a thing. Overseas, all the time in the UK and stuff. They know all our names. They want stuff from us.
They're still breakdancing in France.
I want to go. They want us to come over. I want to go over there to the UK and stuff, because it's because we're a different thing over there than we're not kicked to the curb over there like we are here for partially. So I want to go overseas to the UK and stuff because they just gave Shalimar some kind of plaque that's in the pavement and stuff over there just months ago. So it's like Solar is Motown over there. So and Shalimar goes over there and works 4 or 5. They're over there again right now.
Yes.
They go over there and they pack rooms. They sell out. They're that big over there. So and so they're constantly, we're not responding, but they're constantly asking us, guys, will you do something new? We don't like this and this and this. will you please do some of the old stuff again? I mean, they want it to be modernized, of course, but the equipment does that more than anything. The new sounds, because that's what Bruno Mars and them is. I mean, they're us and Quincy and Total Experience and stuff from that area with the new technology. Really. I mean, because that's all it is. And they're not trying to say any different either. They did a New Jack kind of sounding song, and their video was them coming out of the attic, with the girl, just like in Living Color. So they knew that was New Jack Swing and that was a pitch. So for that song, they did a video just like with the Fly Girls and everything, right? So again, we're in vogue again. So that's all in ending. I'm just a happy guy, and I hope that anybody tuning into this will watch and hopefully see that our kind of thing is come back, and hopefully I can even meet some of these people like Greg. One day, hopefully I can see Greg face to face. I love the work he does for you guys. The still life stuff and stuff. He's a bad man. So I want to meet him. I hope I get a chance to meet him. Your girl, man, that came and said I was sad that she went to Texas.
Astrid.
I that was so close, man. Texas. I was like, if she could have, and we had our thing right after that. If she could have stayed long enough, I would have. She's such a sweetheart. I really would have loved to met her. She's so nice. I couldn't figure out how to get Facebook from. I had it on my computer, but I couldn't figure out how to do it on my phone. She stopped and talked to me about it, and talked to me through it. You know what I mean? She stopped in her day and got me to have Facebook on my phone. Now that's a sweetheart of a person.
Amen.
I love her.
Okay.
Astrid, if you're watching this, I love you to death.
Well, and in closing, I just like for us to just in remembrance of Wayne Lewis, I just want to say, Father God, please bless him and take care of him and his family. And thank you for his the gifts that you gave him that he was able to share with the world. And just thank you for the time that he had here on this planet. And we just pray for his family that they're okay. And thank you again for, hooking him up with us and allowing us to be blessed by his gifts as well. And we thank you for everything. Amen. All right, guys. Well,
David and Jonathan, if you're watching, we're so sorry for your loss.
Yes. Yes. Amen.
Wow.
Okay, guys. Well, we'll catch y'all later. Thanks, Virgil Roberts, again for coming on and blessing the show. We appreciate you, sir. Yeah, and he's coming back. So he says, tell Dana to tune in earlier so we can have a good conversation. So and that would be good because both of y'all are loquacious. Both of y'all can go. So Don Fleming can go. Don Fleming can go too. But sometimes he gets in the pants.
Yeah, y'all ain't studying me.
See, Virgil is just such the knowledge.
I know. That just pours out of him.
So I mean, I want to know the stuff that he knows.
I asked him a question that I would never ask anyone, but I asked him. I said, I want to know your experience of what was your best experience. What do you think is one of your best experiences in Solar? But I also want to know, what do you think Dick Griffey's was? That was like, woo. And when I asked him that, he was like, okay, I'm gonna answer mine first, and then I'll answer Dick's. And Dick's had to do with Africa. When that was one of the biggest moments, and when he just let go of the music industry, he gave it to Suge Knight out of all the people world to give it to, and went on to Africa. He was so busy doing his thing, he didn't see what was happening here. It's turned into a mess over here. But anyway,
Yeah,
God bless
I
everybody.
heard they taped over some of our 2-inch tape stuff. You know, some of the
Oh
rappers.
boy, yeah, they did it. It was bad. They burnt the whole studio down, so it's a mess.
Did
All
they?
right, guys. God bless.
Okay,
Yep, they sure did.
I didn't know
Burned it
that.
down. Yeah. All right. Well, thanks, Don.
All right,
Thank you, Don.
Don, where are you at? Where are you living?
I am in Little Rock right now.
But he's
Oh,
on his way to Cali.
okay.
He's coming to Cali.
All right.
All right.
Technology allows us to do this, you know, no matter where, you know, we're in 3 different states.
Yeah, yeah.
You know, so it's great. So it's great talking to you guys, you know, hopefully, I mean, we'll do it soon, you know.
Most definitely. It's always a pleasure with you, Dana.
Oh, pleasure. My pleasure's all mine, bro.
Well, y'all be
right,
safe.
man.
We are out tomorrow. What we got going on tomorrow before we go?
Solar wants to dance. We're gonna have
There
our
you go.
workout on. So
Oh,
let's
it's
get
Saturday.
it going. Let's
Saturday, yeah.
That's right. That's right. So that's what we're gonna be doing. Here we go. No, not that. Here we go. Yeah.